God can turn your stress into strength. In fact, God does some of his greatest work in stressful situations. All right. Good to see you guys today. Thanks for being here with us. Big shout out to our Central family locations. Help me welcome Central Sunrise Mountain, Central Summerlin, Kingman, Aliante. Good to have you guys here. I thought we'd start with a little story time today. So I brought one of my favorite kids' books here with me. This is Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. This is a classic, y'all. And we'll bring it up here on the screen. I'll kind of read it from there. But Alexander basically gets starts when he goes to bed and he has a rough night. He says, I went to sleep with gum in my mouth and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard and by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water was running. And I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. And then it just gets worse for Alexander. He goes through the day, he goes to school, it's terrible, it's awful. He has to go to the dentist. Come on, we all know how that could be. And then he finally gets back home, and here's what he says when he slumps down to eat. He says, there was lima beans for dinner, and I hate lima beans. Well, who doesn't? Right? He says, there was kissing on TV, and I hate kissing. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes. My marble went down the drain. I had to wear my railroad trade pajamas. I hate my railroad trade pajamas. And then he says, when I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse night light burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony, not with me. It's been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. And his mom says, some days are just like that. And he says, I guess I'll move to Australia. There you go. Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Classic kids book. Anybody relate to Alexander? Anybody had one of those days? Some of you are like, man, I've been in that month. I've been in that year. I'm in that decade right now. The terrible, horrible, no good, very bad decade. And I think sometimes when we go through really tough seasons, really bad days, really hard things, it's easy to start looking out at the future and being filled with fear and trepidation at the next thing that could happen, right? We start imagining the worst case scenario. Who are my worst case scenario people? You know who you are. You're just like, what could happen with the economy and what could happen, with my work situation. And you start imagining, like what could happen with your kids or what could happen with your grandkids, what your future could look like, and you just go down the line and pretty soon you're filled with all kinds of stress and all kinds of anxiety. And stress and anxiety are everywhere in our culture. I mean, kids are facing it, teenagers face it, young adults face it, adults, grandparents, everybody's facing an incredible amount of stress. But here's the thing, stress can kill you. It can literally kill you. In fact, I saw this post on ChatGPT. Somebody asked ChatGPT how you could live to be 140 years old. And they posted like ChatGPT's answer. Now, I was a little skeptical when I read it, like, wow, really? And so I had a friend help me, and we put the answer into ChatGPT and asked it, did you say this? And ChatGPT said, I might have said this. Gotta love it. Already nuance, right? Already play in the gray zone. I might have said this, but ChatGPT said the secret to longevity based on the research is this. And it gave an answer that I thought was interesting. It didn't point to, well, first it pointed to genetics, right? Things that we can't control. If you want to have longevity, genetics play a huge part in that. But then the most important thing it said to longevity for human beings, it isn't diet, it isn't exercise, it isn't having great medical care, it isn't having the right doctors. It says the most important element for longevity is what we would call stress regulation. It said, in fact, if there is a lever that you could pull for longevity, it's all about how you manage stress. So take it for what it's worth. Thank you, ChatGPT. But we all face a tremendous amount of stress in our lives, and stress can kill you. In fact, the research is kind of surprising on what stress can actually do to you. I mean, it affects your cardiovascular system. It affects your metabolism. It actually, there's studies that show it affects the DNA strands in your body, that it starts to break you down at a cellular level. This is what stress can do to you, chronic stress. And so so some of you are like, why did we come to church today? This is good news. This is good news because I believe God can turn our stress into strength. I believe he can turn our stress into strength. And I want to look at how that can happen. Now, we've been in this series called I'm Grateful. We've been talking about the power of gratitude, the power of being thankful people, grateful people that give thanks to God and are grateful for others in our lives, and how that can improve so many aspects of our lives. Can also improve how we handle stress. Let's go to Psalm 46. Let's pick it up in verse 1. I'm going to read this. If you'll help me out on the red word, we'll just interact with God's word here. But the psalmist says, God is our refuge and strength, always ready to what? To help in times of trouble. How many of you could use a little help right now in your life? Who's down for help? Yeah, I'm down for some help. Look, God is present and ready to help. He loves to help his people. I believe he wants to help you and work in your life, and especially when we're in those places of trouble. You know, the word trouble could literally be translated to be in a tight squeeze, to be in a corner. You ever felt cornered in your life? Like your back's against the wall, you don't know where else to turn? This is exactly where God loves to show up and help his people. He loves to bless his people. He loves to move in his people's lives. So you may be under stress, but you don't have to be under stress alone, because we believe God controls the future and he controls our destiny, and he's moving and working to help us in our lives today, even when we can't always see it. God can turn your stress into strength. In fact, God does some of his greatest work in stressful situations. So my first thought for you when it comes to dealing with stress and gratitude today is retune your stress. Retune your stress. I mean, it's easy to think that like all stress is bad. Anybody just kind of ever had that moment where you're like, I just wish that I had a completely stress-free life. I didn't have to deal with stress at all. No stress would be great. Well, I got a few guitars up here. This might be a terrible idea, but the things that we think about when no one's looking. And now here we are. So I've got one guitar here that is not tuned up, okay? So these strings are just slack. It's what we call like slack. You like that? Not so much? Kind of sounds like, I don't know, Halloween. Doesn't really matter what I try to play. Because it sounds terrible. Because there's no tension on the strings. There's no stress on the strings. A lot of times we think, man, if my life could just not have stress, then I'd be happy, then I'd be healthy, then things would be good in my life. Can I tell you, every good thing in life comes with stress? Right? Come on. Some of you prayed to have kids, and then God gave them to you, and look what that did to you. Come on. You know what I'm saying? Somebody right now, you prayed to get that job, and then you got that job, and now you're thinking, what was I thinking? Right? Some of us, you know, we whatever it is in our lives, almost every good thing requires a certain amount of stress and tension. So stress in and of itself isn't bad. The goal isn't to eliminate all stress from our lives. The goal is to just tune the stress up. In other words, chronic stress will kill you, but some stress in your life can be healthy. When you go to the gym, that's your muscles under stress. When you work out, that's your body under stress, and that's what helps you get better and get healthier. So I've got another guitar up here, and this one is actually tuned up. And it's interesting, you know, these strings are under tremendous pressure. Like I have a practice guitar at home that you can take this bolt off on the back of the guitar, and you take the neck off to store it, to travel. And if I don't loosen those strings up, that neck will like fly off. I mean, it's under so much pressure, these strings. But here's what the pressure gets you, right? Right? It's in tune. Little jazz chord. play a little blues line here, okay? Right, come on. Or, no guitar moment is complete without taking you to every sporting event that ever happens now. It doesn't matter the sport, they all play this song. All aboard. Okay. I don't know, did it work? Crazy idea. What's the point of all that? Well, to keep you awake. And the point is that some stress is good for us. God can use stress in our lives to teach us to rely on Him. He can use stress in our lives to help us be molded and shaped into who He's creating us to be. Like, none of us want a life with no stress. That's a slack-tuned life. You just be flabby, right? There's no discipline in that, right? A stress-free, that's why, I think sometimes it's why, like, when people retire, like 3 years later, they're dead. Like they went from like stress to, I don't know, the shock to their system or what? Like, we need something to do. We need to contribute. We need to be a part of something. We need to be engaged with our life and our body, because that's how God has wired us up. Psalm 46 gives us an idea of how to sort of tune the stress in our life by remembering who God is. He says, a river brings what? Joy to the city of God, the sacred home of the Most High. So many of the Psalms are talking about specifically Jerusalem and the temple in Jerusalem, but we read them today and we take hope because it reminds us of who God is for His people. He says, God dwells in that city. It cannot be destroyed. From the very break of day, God will protect it. The nations are in chaos. Their kingdoms crumble. God's voice thunders and the earth melts. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. Here it is. The God of Israel is our fortress. So we have a God who cares and loves. The book of Revelation says that we can come now and drink freely from the water of the river of life. We can drink freely from all that God provides, and He can help us carry the stress that we all carry in our lives. There was a study that's fascinating that was done where in World War II, psychologists noticed this pattern where infantry soldiers reported incredibly high levels of stress. And after about 60 days on the battlefield, they were just kind of like emotionally dead. The stress, the anxiety, it wore them down so bad that they just completely shut down. And you might think, well, of course, right? It's war. Like, that's what war does. That's an obvious reaction to war. But what was interesting is that they found that this same pattern didn't happen with fighter pilots. 93% of fighter pilots claimed to be happy in their assignment. Now, what's interesting about that is half of those fighter pilots would die in combat, way more than the infantry people, and they knew it. And what they found is these fighter pilots, once they got in their aircraft, and once they got their hands on the controls, they felt a sense of control over their destiny, right? Whereas the infantrymen, they just got sent from one battle to another. It felt random. They didn't know when they might die or when they might get bombed. And they kind of discovered like the key to analyzing anxiety and stress in our lives. And we might kind of put it like this. We'll bring it up here on a slide. That stress and anxiety are a result in our lives of a sense of increased vulnerability, like we're more and more vulnerable in some area of our life, and we have less and less control. An increased sense of vulnerability, a decreased sense of control, that's the perfect recipe for stress and anxiety. And what the psalmist is reminding us in the Psalm 46 is that yes, there are stressful things. Nations crumble, there are wars, there's all kinds of things going on around the world. But as followers of Jesus today, we can tune into God and His strength in our lives. And this is more of the picture of what peace looks like. Our sense of vulnerability starts to come down and our sense of control starts to go up. Not control in our own strength and in our own power, but our sense that we know someone who is in control and we trust God to be in control even when things are difficult and hard. And so this is the recipe for peace. We feel less vulnerable, we feel more sense of control, and our faith gives us that in our lives. Philippians 4, chapter 6, look at this verse. It says this, tell God what you need and what? Thank him, there's gratitude, thank him for all that he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. That verse could also be translated, God's peace, which passes all understanding. So if you want God's peace that passes all understanding, he says, here it is. He says, pray and give thanks. In other words, depend on God and trust on God. I would put it this way. We all can engage in a little PDA. Now, when I say PDA, I don't mean public display of affection, right? We've all seen people engaging in too much PDA. You know what I'm talking about, right? You're like, come on, man, give me a break. Go somewhere else. What are you doing? Well, yeah, you said get a room. I didn't say it, you said it. I'm just repeating what you said. That was what we all thought, though. But here's another version of PDA. Pray, decide, and act. First of all, pray. Ask God for help. Ask him to move. Ask him to work. The Bible says if we need wisdom, ask God who loves to give wisdom to his children, right? Ask him for wisdom. Pray. And while you're praying, don't forget to give thanks. We've talked about the power of gratitude the last several weeks, but it's such an important part of prayer. I don't hardly go through a single day in my life that doesn't start with prayer and gratitude for all that God has done. Even if I'm running, even if it's just a few minutes, it centers me and it gets me ready to face the day. And then decide. Sometimes stress is resulting in our lives because we haven't made a decision. Somebody said that stress is a decision that has not yet been made. Right? You ever been in that situation where you feel that tension of what are you going to do? The uncertainty of what's the right call here? What's the right thing? And once you make the decision, have you noticed you may still have stress, but it's a different kind of tension and stress after you actually make the decision? And some of us are in the middle of making a decision right now, and the stress, the uncertainty is tearing us apart. And I would say, ask God for wisdom, ask him for insight, ask him for help, and seek wise counsel from other people in the church. Get some wisdom, speaking into your situation. Really try to get to the bottom of things. But sometimes, if I'm honest, it's kind of felt like I'm trying to choose between better and best, and it can be hard to make a decision. And sometimes in those decisions, the healthiest thing I've done is just decide. And just say, God, all right, stop me. Stop me if this is the wrong decision, but to the best of my ability, this is what I feel like you're calling me to do. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to decide. And once you make that decision, your stress, the burden of it begins to lessen. And then act. Sometimes it's just powerful to act. Have that conversation. Step towards forgiveness towards that person. Come to church and commit to it. Be kind to somebody at work. Go out of your way. Whatever it is that you feel God's leading you to do, pray, decide, and then act. And it can turn your stress actually into your strength. Here's another thought, and that is to take refuge in God. Take refuge in God. Now, the psalmist is going to start talking about just God and who he is and natural disasters. I don't know about you, but I grew up in Texas. So we grew up sort of in Tornado Alley up in the panhandle of Texas where I was raised. So when you grow up around a certain natural disaster kind of thing, have you noticed how you get desensitized to it? Like you don't really, people get so weird about tornadoes, and I'm like, what's it's like tornadoes, oh my gosh, you watch Twister on TV or whatever. I'm like, come on. Man, I had a tornado touchdown a couple hundred yards from my house, and I can tell you where was I and all my neighbors? In the front yard. Going like, oh man, look at that. Yeah, oh wow, yeah, it's touching down right now. Now, if you see a column forming above your house, well, that's a different story. We all know that something starts dropping from above your head, you better run, brother. And where would I run? Well, all houses where I grew up in Tornado Alley had a cellar. It was in our backyard. It was literally just a dugout hole with old wooden stairs, barely tall enough for you to stand in it. We would all run and get down in the cellar, take refuge. And sometimes we just need to take refuge. Sometimes you take action, sometimes you take refuge. Look at what Psalm says in Psalm 46. He says, God is our what? Refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. So we will not fear when earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea. This is symbolic, poetic language. He's saying we're not going to be afraid when the ground shakes. We're not going to be afraid when it feels like things are falling apart. Why? Because God is our refuge and strength. That word refuge is a fascinating word because it would have reminded the Old Testament audience of the cities of refuge that God had set up throughout Israel. So in Israel, he set up 6 cities of refuge. That's what they were called. They were usually in areas that were well lit, were like elevated areas where you could see the light from far away. These 6 cities were spread out kind of evenly throughout Israel, and they were there in case you got into a bad situation. If all of a sudden you're falsely accused, or you get into a situation where there are people coming after you, trying to kill you, you could run for a city of refuge. And when you got there, they couldn't refuse you. It was a city of refuge. And you get there and cry out, refuge, refuge. And they got to open the gate. They've got to let you in and give you sanctuary. Now, your enemies may show up, and they may, have all kinds of things against you, but at the city of refuge, they would sort it out in a calm way and allow a person to be able to catch their breath in that scenario. And all of that would have come to their mind when we see this phrase, God is our refuge. In other words, when you're afraid, when you're stressed, when you're worn out, when you're exhausted, you can run to him. He won't turn you away. He'll open the door for you. He'll give you sanctuary. He'll give you a place to catch your breath. He'll help you deal with the things that you're dealing with in your life. God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. And then we come down to one of my favorite verses at the end of the Psalm, Psalm 42, beginning in verse 10. It says this, it says, be what? Still. You see this? Be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world. When you're stressed out, this is a powerful verse. Sometimes you just need to be still and just remember God is God. And he's got it. And you're not. And you don't. He is. And he does, right? Be still. That word still in the original Hebrew language could be translated drop it. I thought that was interesting. Like something you're carrying, and then be still, stop, and drop it. Let go of it. Can I ask you what you may need to drop today? What's stressing you out? What's breaking you down at a cellular level? What's killing you? Right? Because you don't have to carry that kind of chronic stress. You have a God that loves to help, a God that is your refuge, and you can drop it. Maybe it's a kid right now and they're making decisions in their life, an adult kid that's stressing you out, and you keep carrying that weight every single day. The truth is, our kids are on loan to us. They're actually God's kids. And one of the most powerful things we can do in our lives is surrender them back to him and realize we steward those kids and those relationships as long as we can and as well as we can. But they're God's kids. And he's got to watch over them when we can't. Maybe it's like finance and you're worried about things going on in your job right now and it just feels like the rocks are so heavy in your life. Look, do what you can do. Get on your spending plan. Get your side hustle going. Work all the angles you can work, and then realize there's a time where you need to drop it or it's going to crush you. Just drop it. And say, God, I just give it to you. I surrender to you. Be still and know that God is bigger than anything you're facing. Be still and know that he's your provider. He's your protector. He's your city of refuge. Be still and know that he loves you. He loves your kids. He loves your friends. He cares about people in your life. He cares about things in your life. Even the hairs on your head are numbered. Come on, even if the number's 0. Be still and know That through faith in Jesus Christ, look, your sins are forgiven. Your life has been redeemed, right? Your future is secure in him. He calls you a child of God. Be still and know that God has a plan, even when it feels like everything's falling apart, that he will never leave you. He will never forsake you, that he can lead you right where you need to be. Be still and know that nothing in heaven or earth can separate you from the love that you have in Christ Jesus. You have his grace, his favor, his blessing, and you will one day enter into your eternal reward. Be still and know that this world, it's not all there is. That one day there won't be inflation. Come on, somebody. One day there won't be sickness or physical challenges or mental issues. One day he says he will wipe every tear from our eyes and mend every broken heart. Be still and know that you don't need to fear the future, because the future is in his hands. Even though you may experience trouble and stress, God himself will be your refuge. He will be with you. He will meet those challenges with you. He'll give you what you need to overcome the problem, or he'll allow you to escape the storm. Be still and know that he is God and you are not. Some of us are carrying so much stress right now. Can I just tell you, some of it we just need to drop. Just drop it. And what happens when you drop it? Well, in my experience, you take it back up again. So you got to drop it again. And then you'll take it back up again and you won't even realize you're carrying it. Anybody like this? Then all of a sudden you realize that you're totally stressed out and your shoulders are, you can't hardly turn your neck. Just drop it. And get in a habit, God, of giving it to God. Praying, asking God for help, giving thanks for all that he's done in our life, and then dropping it. Look, it's Thanksgiving week. Some of you got family coming in. That's stressing you out. Well, give thanks to God that you have family, even if they're crazy. Give thanks to God that you'll get to spend some time with them. And maybe even in all of that, God can do something through you to bring hope and encouragement to someone in your family. Maybe this Thanksgiving's hard because you won't be around family, or you're not sure what you're gonna do on Thanksgiving, or many of you are working. It doesn't feel special. Listen, give it to God and give thanks to God for all that he's done. Because it may be while you're working on Thanksgiving, you can bring hope and light to somebody who desperately needs it.